All right, why not to learn multiple instruments? So this is a follow-up to my other video, why to learn multiple instruments, or whatever I'll call it when I put it up. So in that video, I went through 10 reasons to learn multiple instruments. Obviously, I think it's worth it because I've dabbled in actually about 10 different instruments, depending what counts where you draw the lines. But there are definitely reasons not to go down that adventurous route and expand your instrument collection. So here we go. Reason number one, hours in a day. So let's say you count up the number of hours you have in a week that aren't dedicated to work, family, and stuff like that. So you get that number of hours that you have that aren't taken. And then let's say you count up how many of those hours that you're willing to commit to your music hobby. Because obviously it's not all of your free time, because I'm sure you want to spend some time watching movies or taking naps or swiping some Fruit Ninja once in a while. So once you've got how many hours you have available for music, then slice that number again to include the number of hours you can commit to practicing your particular instrument. Because this means you're cutting away, you're removing however much time you'll spend playing, because playing is not the same as practicing. You're also cutting away the time you might spend improving basic or general skills such as ear training, songwriting, or learning about chord theory, because those aren't skills for your specific instrument. Once you've got the amount of time you can afford to spend on focused practice for instrument-specific skills, how much time is that? Because that's your number. That's the number that we'll have to slice into how many instruments you have if you want to actually be improving in the instruments. I think it'd be safe to say that 15 to 45 minutes, 5 days a week, will be a good relaxed benchmark for most relaxed hobbyists. And definitely 30 minutes to 45 minutes would be a great goal if you're anything past a very beginner. So if you learn 3 instruments, can you commit to an hour and a half of total practice per week, plus your generic and musicality type practice and playing? Now, of course, you don't have to spend that much time, but it's a good thing to just be able to start thinking about time before you launch out, because there's no sense in starting with all this excitement and then ending up quitting when you run out of time and realize you just learned something you're not going to maintain. Reason number one, hours in a day. Reason number two, breadth of a single instrument. So it's super exciting to go through the initial stages of learning an instrument, especially if you've got a particular achievable goal in mind, like I want to play this style in this, whatever. It's super exciting to go from 0 to I can play the drums, I can play guitar, whatever the case is. But it's easy to forget how many layers you already have available to explore within the instrument you can already play. Learning a new style, for example, can be every bit as expansive as learning a new instrument. So if you play rock, for example, learning to play jazz, blues, classical music, modern classical, etc., would be a whole new world, every bit as expansive as picking up 5 new instruments. And you may find it just as compelling, and it would make you much more recognizably competent as a musician because you're improving your skill set within one instrument. In addition to exploring additional genres, there may be other important aspects of musicianship that you haven't yet explored, which would also be just as expansive as learning more instruments. So for example, if you learned guitar through tablature, you can find exciting new worlds of musicianship by learning how to read standard sheet music, learning to hear and transcribe guitar parts by ear, learning to improvise your own guitar melodies on the fly, learning to play chord melody guitar, let's say from a lead sheet, and the list goes on. You may find that expanding your musicianship through additional angles like these can be just as compelling as picking up a new instrument, and the added benefit is that they make you so much more recognizably competent as a musician. Reason 1, hours in a day. Reason 2, breadth of a single instrument. Reason 3, MIDI tools. If you're interested in songwriting, or if you just want to know what it feels like to make the kind of music that you might associate with some particular instrument, you can actually simulate the experience with MIDI. Especially for pianists, you can get creative with all the knobs and dials and simulate most other instruments. The only thing holding you back is your software and hardware. If you're a guitar player, you can get software that converts MIDI, guitar pitches into MIDI in order to simulate the various instruments. And if you struggle with getting those software options to work for you, you can go ahead and buy a full-fledged digital MIDI guitar. And if you play some other instrument that doesn't have that kind of pitch-based, chord-friendly kind of setup, you can still go ahead and dabble in GarageBand with your iPad using the on-screen keyboard. Or if you prefer, if you're a sheet music guy, you can get MuseScore and compose some robotic MIDI, you know. Okay, so it might not be quite as thrilling as picking up a new instrument. But the options of MIDI instruments, dabbling in songwriting, expanding your GarageBand skills, those options do definitely help scratch the same itch or a very similar itch. And if you spend, let's say you mix the two, let's say you spend just a little time studying the alternate instruments instead of learning them full out, then you end up being able to do a better job simulating them in your digital audio workstation. So the question is, which target do you think is going to make you a more competent musician and more able to do the kinds of things you want to do? Is it going to be more significant to learn another instrument and then to end up having one more instrument that you've got some skill at, or, on the other hand, to spend the equivalent number of hours improving your digital audio skills? Which one's going to give you more of what you want? Reason number 4, media mixed playing and practicing. So there was a time, you know, certainly 100 years ago, and even more recently than that, there was a time where if you wanted to experience a certain instrument, then you were going to need to have that physical instrument in the room with you. And then you'd need to have either yourself or somebody else who could actually play the instrument. But these days, you can experience the sound qualities of any instrument while playing the instrument that you're good at. There are so many jam tracks, practice apps, music games, and all kinds of other musical tools that are available so that you can have a very diversified musical experience with all the instruments without actually having to learn and be able to play that one musical instrument that has grabbed your attention. Reason number 5, how good are you really? You may feel good enough about your skills with your primary instrument so that you feel you're ready to expand to other instruments. But what about the goals that are still out of reach for you with your current instrument? So if you imagine in your mind, imagine your skills as lines on a bar graph that are gradually getting higher. You're growing toward these unreached goals. And let's say they're growing at 5 pixels a week. Well, picking up that extra instrument is going to slow down these growing lines. Maybe it's not 5 pixels a week anymore, but now you're only going to grow 3 pixels a week because you've only got so much time in a day. And then what's that going to do to those unreached goals that are still way out of reach that you may have lost sight of? So if you're a pianist, how are you at advanced sight reading? You know, the kind where the sheet music looks like it came out of an ink factory? Or how about on-the-fly ear training based work, playing a song for the first time without any sheet music? Can you transcribe melodies without having to sit down for hours? Can you improvise in a band? Can you improvise original songs by yourself without preparing? Can you play lead sheets in multiple styles? The list goes on. If you're a guitarist, can you play melodies at various positions along the neck? Can you play chord melody arrangements? Can you play advanced chords? Can you play all the different types of bar chords on a steel string acoustic? Can you identify the names of notes across the fretboard? Can you isolate chord shapes for arpeggios in a given key? Can you read your choice of tablature or traditional sheet music without having to sit down and study it first? And then how about creating your own chord charts by ear or transcribing melodies from songs that you hear on the radio? And not to mention your acoustic versus electric skills. So the point is, for most instruments, there's a lot to learn. Being able to play basic stuff well is thrilling, and that's all you need to have a good time or jam with your friends. But if you want to really consider yourself a pianist or a guitarist or a drummer, etc., you might find that you still have a huge way to go. And the question is, are you willing to trade off all that valuable practice time in order to dabble in another instrument? Reason 6. So what have we got so far? We've got hours in a day, breadth of a single instrument, we've got MIDI tools, we've got the availability of media mixed playing and practicing, we've got the question of how good are you really, and then number 6, storage space and money. Let's face it, instruments take up space and they cost money. Now, I doubt it will break your pocketbook or break your closet to pick up a harmonica from Amazon. But other than that, most instruments will need a place to live. And the better you get at the instrument, the more important it's going to end up being to have a decently high quality instrument that takes money to buy, and also which shouldn't be stored in that drafty, wet corner of your garage. So, a couple examples. Cheap guitars can have displeasing sound quality, sometimes end up having high action, making it really hard to play certain chords. Or cheap guitars a lot of the time have fret buzz that just gets in the way unless you put more money into it. Cheap keyboards don't simulate proper key action, which makes it impossible to learn proper wrist technique. Physical pianos, like the actual physical ones, acoustic ones, are now sometimes, depending where you are, you might be able to find some for free or for cheap, but that's because they're so heavy and hard to move, and they need to be tuned regularly. They're also, like guitars, they're sensitive to humidity and other environmental factors. And pianos don't have volume knobs for quiet practice. But let's not even talk about drums on that front. Acoustic drums are infamous for the volume issue, and electronic drum sets, they've got that in the bag, but they tend to be questionable in terms of replicating the acoustic experience unless you're going to pay a lot more. Though on the electronic drum side, they're definitely getting way better, and eDrums is what I use at this point as a beginner drummer, really. So before you expand your instrument collection, you may want to consider whether you're going to be buying another instrument 5 to 10 years from now, which might cost, let's say, 10 times the price you're paying right now for your entry-level instrument. For that matter, depending on your price range, you may even want to consider paying a little more right now for that entry-level instrument, just so you don't teach yourself bad technique. And who knows, if you don't have a good place to store your new instrument, maybe you won't even end up playing it before something tragic happens and your instrument suddenly needs repair, or worse yet, disappears without a trace. Okay, so that's all I got. I set out to come up with 10 reasons because I had 10 in my other video, but I only came up with 6, which suggests to me that it's always better to learn more instruments. So buy yourself a piano, get a keyboard, and a guitar, and a ukulele, and a harmonica. Get yourself a drum kit and an eDrum kit. And then get yourself one of those little pocket MIDI keyboards so you can play tunes with your headphones at Starbucks. Grab an Irish penny whistle and a recorder, and get a great big old box of kazoos. After that, you're going to have to learn the theremin. It's going to be amazing because nothing can stop you, not even time. So get to it.